If you have ever cared for someone who is avoidant, you already know how confusing it feels. One moment they are warm, present, and even deeply connected, and the next they pull away like nothing ever mattered. And the hardest part is that the more you try to get close, the more distant they become. So today, I want to change the way you see this situation. Because avoidant people do not fall in love the same way anxious or secure people do. They do not respond well to pressure, chasing, or high emotional intensity. In fact, those things often push them much further away. What actually makes an avoidant person fall deeply in love is something most people get completely wrong. It is not about manipulation or playing games. It is a shift in who you are being within the connection. When you are dealing with an avoidant, one of the biggest misunderstandings is believing that love grows through intensity, constant reassurance, or emotional urgency. For an avoidant, those things do not feel like closeness. They feel like heavy pressure. And pressure is exactly what makes them shut down, pull back, or emotionally disappear. What they are truly responding to, often without even realizing it, is emotional safety. Not emotional distance and not emotional coldness, but safety that allows them to stay connected without feeling overwhelmed. Emotional safety means you can express how you feel without demanding a response in return. It means your emotions are present, but they are not heavy. You are not asking them to carry your anxiety, fix your fears, or prove their love over and over again. Instead, you communicate from a place of calm self-respect. You let them see your feelings, but you do not make those feelings their responsibility. And for an avoidant, this is incredibly disarming. It is unfamiliar, and that is exactly why it is powerful. Avoidant people are used to others pulling, chasing, questioning, and getting upset when they sense distance. They expect emotional reactions, they expect conflict, they expect to be made the villain for needing space. So when you do not do that, when you remain emotionally present without pushing, it creates a moment of internal pause for them. Their nervous system relaxes, their defenses lower, they stop bracing for impact, and that is when real connection becomes possible. This does not mean hiding your needs or pretending you do not care. It means choosing the right timing, tone, and intention. Instead of saying, "Why are you so distant lately?" you might say, "I enjoy feeling connected to you, and I trust we will find our rhythm." That small difference changes everything. One creates pressure while the other creates safety. And safety is what allows an avoidant to move closer without feeling like they are losing their independence. When an avoidant feels emotionally safe with you, they begin to associate your presence with peace rather than a chore. You become the person they do not have to perform for, explain themselves to, or protect themselves from. And that is rare for them. That is addictive. Over time, they starting more contact, sharing more of themselves, and staying emotionally engaged longer, not because you asked them to, but because they want to. This is how an avoidant falls deeper, not through intensity, but through relief. Not through emotional demands, but through emotional steadiness. When you become a place where they can feel close without pressure, love stops feeling dangerous to them. And once love feels safe, it has room to grow. One of the most magnetic things you can bring into a connection with an avoidant is genuine independence. Not the kind that is acted out to get a reaction, but the kind that exists whether they are watching or not. Avoidants are extremely sensitive to emotional dependence. The moment they sense that someone's happiness, stability, or sense of self is tied too tightly to them, their instinct is to pull away. Not because they do not care, but because it feels like a loss of freedom. True independence removes that fear entirely. Real independence shows up in how you live your life, not in how you talk about it. You have your own interests, routines, goals, friendships, and sources of joy that do not stop when they step back. You do not disappear into the relationship. You do not wait by the phone. You do not silently hope they notice how unbothered you are. You are simply busy with a life that matters to you, and that honesty is what makes an avoidant lean in. Avoidants are wired to value freedom. When they see someone who is emotionally grounded and self-directed, it triggers respect. Respect is often the doorway to love for them. You are no longer seen as someone who might cling, demand, or collapse emotionally if they take space. Instead, you become someone who chooses them, not someone who needs them. That distinction is small, but it is everything. What is interesting is that independence does not create distance, it creates curiosity. When you do not make the avoidant your only priority, they begin to wonder where they truly stand with you. Your absence does not feel like punishment or manipulation. It feels natural. And because it is natural, it does not trigger defensiveness. It triggers interest. They start reaching out more, checking in, and emotionally investing because connection now feels like a choice rather than a job. This kind of independence also stabilizes the emotional dynamic. There is no chasing and no retreating. There are just two whole people meeting in the middle. For an avoidant, that balance feels safe. They can move closer without fearing that closeness will swallow them. They can stay present without feeling trapped. And here is the quiet power in all of this. When you are truly independent, you do not need to control the outcome. You do not need to plan or perform. You show up as yourself, grounded and self-sufficient. And that calm confidence becomes deeply attractive to an avoidant because it allows love to grow without pressure. When freedom is kept, connection becomes something they actually want, not something they feel they have to escape from. When an avoidant connects with someone, they are constantly scanning for emotional chaos, even when nothing seems wrong on the surface. Their nervous system is trained by past experiences to expect conflict, overwhelm, or emotional unpredictability the moment closeness begins to deepen. This is why emotional reactivity, sudden mood shifts, impulsive texts, emotional ultimatums, or intense reactions to small changes feels threatening to them. Calm consistency, on the other hand, feels grounding, and grounding is what makes them stay. Calm consistency does not mean being emotionless or passive. It means your emotional state is not controlled by their behavior in the moment. You do not swing between warmth and withdrawal based on how much attention they give you. You do not get louder when you feel unsure. Instead, you remain steady, composed, and emotionally regulated, even when things feel unclear. For an avoidant, this creates a sense of predictability that they rarely experience in close relationships. Avoidants often grew up in environments where emotions felt messy, overwhelming, or unsafe. So, when they encounter someone who can express feelings without drama, disappointment without blame, and needs without urgency, it changes their internal story. They begin to realize that closeness does not have to come with emotional storms. That realization alone can deepen their attachment far more than grand romantic gestures ever could. When you respond calmly instead of reactively, you show emotional maturity. For example, if they take longer to respond or seem distant, a reactive response would be to assume rejection and confront them emotionally. A calm response is allowing space while staying emotionally available. That steadiness sends a powerful message. You are not trying to control the connection. You trust yourself, you trust the process, and that trust lowers their defenses. Over time, your calm consistency becomes something they rely on. They associate you with emotional safety and stability. You become the person who does not create problems when things get close, who does not fall apart when things slow down, and who does not make them feel responsible for managing your emotions. That sense of emotional ease is incredibly attractive to an avoidant. This is where love deepens quietly. They start opening up more, not because they are pushed to, but because it feels safe to do so. They stay longer in emotional conversations. They show up more consistently as themselves. Calm consistency creates a container where intimacy can exist without fear. And for an avoidant, that is not just appealing, it is life-changing. For an avoidant, distance has always been their safety tool. When emotions feel too close, too intense, or too demanding, pulling back is how they take care of themselves. Most people respond to this by chasing, questioning, demanding reassurance, or emotionally withdrawing as punishment. And while those reactions are understandable, They actually reinforce the avoidant belief that closeness leads to a loss of freedom and emotional overwhelm. Allowing distance without chasing or punishing changes that entire pattern. When you allow space calmly, you send a message that most avoidants have never received. You are free, and I am still here. That message removes the emotional tug of war. You are not disappearing to cause fear, and you are not pursuing to relieve anxiety. You simply remain steady. This creates an internal contradiction for the avoidant. Distance is supposed to bring relief, but when there is no drama, no guilt, and no emotional backlash, the distance loses its power. Punishment, even when subtle, always creates resistance. Silence meant to teach a lesson, emotional coldness used as leverage, or passive-aggressive behavior might feel like self-protection, but to an avoidant, it confirms their deepest fears about relationships. Chasing does the same thing from the opposite direction. It tells them that closeness means being responsible for someone else's emotional state. Both extremes push them further away. Allowing distance does not mean abandoning yourself. It means you do not panic when space appears. You continue living your life. You do not grill them when they return. You do not demand explanations. You let the connection breathe. And in that breathing room, something unexpected happens. The avoidant begins to miss you, not because you planned an absence, but because your presence was peaceful, non-invasive, and emotionally safe. When an avoidant realizes they can take space and still be welcomed without pressure, shame, or consequences, their internal alarm system quiets down. They start returning sooner. They begin starting contact more often. They feel less need to escape because escape is no longer dramatic or necessary. This is where the shift occurs. Distance stops being a tool of control and starts becoming irrelevant. Closeness no longer feels like a trap. It feels like a choice. And choice is what makes love last for an avoidant. When you do not chase them during distance and you do not punish them for needing it, you become the one person they do not associate with fear. And once fear is removed, connection naturally deepens. Boundaries are often misunderstood in relationships with avoidance. Many people think setting boundaries will push an avoidant away or make them feel controlled. In reality, the opposite is true. What unsettles an avoidant is not boundaries, but a lack of them. When someone has no clear limits, no standards, and no self-protection, it creates an unspoken pressure for the avoidant to manage the emotional balance of the relationship. And that pressure is exactly what they try to escape. Clear boundaries communicate something powerful without needing many words: self-respect. They say, I value myself, my time, and my emotional well-being. For an avoidant, this is deeply grounding. It signals that you are not going to overextend, over-sacrifice, or slowly build up resentment. You are not silently hoping they will change. You are choosing what works for you and calmly stepping back from what does not. That clarity feels stable, and stability is attractive to an avoidant. Healthy boundaries are not ultimatums or emotional walls. They are expressed calmly and consistently. For example, instead of demanding more communication, a boundary sounds like, I enjoy consistency. So if communication becomes very broken, I naturally pull back and focus elsewhere. There is no blame in that, no threat, just honesty. And that honesty allows the avoidant to engage without feeling cornered. Avoidants may initially test boundaries not out of malice but out of habit. They are used to people bending their limits to keep the connection alive. When your boundary remains steady without emotional explosion or explanation, something shifts. They begin to respect you, and respect is a critical ingredient for love with an avoidant. Without respect, closeness feels unstable. With it, closeness feels earned and safe. Boundaries also remove the unspoken expectation that you will tolerate emotional inconsistency forever. They protect your energy and prevent you from becoming emotionally reactive. This keeps the dynamic balanced. Instead of you chasing for reassurance, the avoidant is left with space to choose whether they want to meet you at your level. And when that choice is theirs, it does not trigger their fear of being controlled. Over time, your boundaries teach the avoidant how to treat you. They learn what behavior leads to connection and what leads to distance, not through punishment, but through self-respect. And that self-respect makes you stand out. You become someone they admire, not someone they feel responsible for. And when admiration enters the connection, love has room to grow without resistance. One of the fastest ways to overwhelm an avoidant is overgiving. Not because generosity is wrong, but because excessive emotional effort often carries an unspoken expectation. Even when you do not say it out loud, overgiving can feel like a silent demand for closeness, reassurance, or commitment. Avoidants are highly sensitive to these invisible pressures. Emotional availability, when it is balanced and grounded, draws them in. Overgiving pushes them away. Being emotionally available means you are open, warm, and expressive, but you are not losing yourself in the process. You share affection without flooding them. You communicate interest without chasing. You offer care without trying to buy love. This creates a dynamic where connection feels light rather than heavy. And lightness is what allows an avoidant to stay present without activating their fear of being trapped. Overgiving often shows up as constant availability, excessive reassurance, or sacrificing your own needs to keep the connection smooth. While this might feel loving, it subtly shifts the power dynamic. The avoidant begins to feel responsible for your emotional state, even if you never ask them to be. That responsibility is what makes them withdraw. Emotional availability without overgiving removes that burden completely. When you allow the avoidant to come toward you, instead of always meeting them halfway, you create space for their desire to grow. You are not closing yourself off. You are simply allowing reciprocity to exist. You let them start things sometimes. You let them invest emotionally at their own pace. And when they do, it feels earned, not expected. That sense of earned closeness is crucial for an avoidant to fall deeper. This also means you do not over-explain your feelings or over-justify your needs. You say what you feel simply and calmly, then you let it land. You trust that the right response will come from alignment, not persuasion. That confidence is deeply attractive to an avoidant because it signals emotional self-sufficiency. You are connected but not dependent. Over time, this balanced availability creates a powerful emotional association. The avoidant experiences you as warm but not consuming, present but not demanding, loving but not self-sacrificing. That combination feels rare and safe. It allows them to stay engaged without losing themselves. This is where love quietly deepens, not through intensity, but through balance. When you are emotionally open without overgiving, you invite an avoidant to meet you in the middle. And when they meet you there, the connection feels chosen, not forced. When it comes to loving an avoidant, the biggest shift is realizing that love does not grow through force, intensity, or emotional chasing. It grows through safety, balance, and self-respect. The moment you stop trying to pull love out of them and instead become someone who feels peaceful to love, everything changes. An avoidant does not fall deeper because they are convinced or pressured. They fall deeper because being with you feels easier than being without you. Each of these principles works together. Emotional safety removes fear, independence removes pressure, calm consistency builds trust. Allowing distance without punishment removes resistance. Boundaries create respect. Emotional availability without overgiving creates desire. None of these are tricks or games. They are shifts in how you show up, grounded, secure, and self-led. And here is the most important truth. When you embody these qualities, you are no longer trying to make an avoidant love you more. You are creating a dynamic where love can exist naturally, whether they rise to meet you or not. You remain in your power. You stop shrinking, overextending, or waiting to be chosen. Ironically, this is often when avoidants do choose you, because love finally feels safe, free, and mutual. And that is the kind of love that lasts, not just with avoidants, but with anyone truly capable of meeting you at your level. One of the most powerful things to understand about an avoidant is that they do not fear connection itself. They fear the loss of their own identity within that connection. This is why maintaining your own spark is so important. When you have a life that is full, exciting, and independent, you aren't just taking the pressure off them. You are becoming a person they can admire from a distance until they feel safe enough to come closer. For an avoidant, admiration is a much safer emotion than obligation. If they feel they have to be with you to keep you happy, they will eventually run. But if they see you happy on your own, they will want to be a part of that happiness. It changes the energy from you needing something from them to them wanting something from you. This leads to the concept of the slow burn. Many people try to rush the emotional stages of a relationship to reach a point of security, but for an avoidant, speed is a warning sign. They need time to process their feelings without the fear that their emotions are being managed by someone else. When you allow the relationship to move at a slower pace, you are giving their nervous system time to catch up with their heart. You are showing them that you are not in a rush to consume their time or their space. This patience is often the very thing that makes them realize they don't want to leave. They start to see that being with you doesn't mean giving up their freedom. It means having a partner who respects their boundaries as much as they respect their own. Another key part of this journey is how you handle your own triggers. It is natural to feel anxious when someone you love pulls away, but your power lies in how you handle that anxiety. Instead of looking to the avoidant to soothe your fears, you must learn to soothe yourself. When you can witness their distance without taking it personally, you stop the cycle of push and pull. You become a stable rock in their world. They start to realize that their distance doesn't break you and your closeness doesn't trap them. This creates a rare middle ground where true intimacy can finally live. You aren't just waiting for them to change. You are creating an environment where change is possible. In the long run, this way of being isn't just about the avoidant. It is about your own growth as a secure and confident person. You are learning that your value is not defined by how much attention someone gives you or how fast they respond to a message. You are learning to be the leader of your own emotional life. When you lead with self-respect and calm, you naturally attract people who are capable of meeting that standard. If the avoidant is capable of growth, they will rise to meet you in that space of safety. If they are not, your own independence will ensure that you are still whole and happy regardless of the outcome. This is the ultimate freedom in love, knowing that you are okay on your own, which makes the choice to be together even more meaningful.